Hello and welcome to the CX Files podcast. I'm your host, Mark Hillary. Now, why are chatbots just so awful? I can remember that I was once locked out of my PayPal account. I was using the chatbot to try telling them that they were sending unlock codes to a phone I had years ago. It was impossible for the bot to understand the problem, and it didn't hand over to a human agent. And of course, for such a simple problem, a human would understand it immediately. In the end, I contacted them on Twitter. But why is it like this? Everyone I talk to has got a chatbot horror story. Now, according to our guest this week, chatbots don't have to be so awful if a little thought is applied when they're implemented. Lian Rowlands is the Director of Partnerships at Conversations by Amy. She's based near Swindon in the UK. Lian has an extensive history in CX with a strong focus on CX solutions in the retail industry. I called her up to find out how can we improve the reputation of chatbots in CX. Okay, Lian, it's great to get you on the podcast finally. Well, I think you've appeared, haven't you? But it was a couple of years ago. So
I have, yeah. It was a couple of years ago now.
Yeah. So it's good to get you back, and in your role now with Conversations with Amy, actually looking at focusing on chatbots. Now I know, when you talk about chatbots to a lot of people, they kind of roll their eyes, and I think one of the big problems has been around expectations. We hear about a lot of companies that promise the world that the chatbot can do everything, but clearly they can't, and that's why we get this negative reaction. So, I mean, in your experience, is this question around expectation of what they can actually achieve and what they do well is really one of the main problems that we see today with chatbots?
Yeah, it's a huge problem. I think the first thing that everyone needs to remember and consider is that chatbots aren't human. And with the best will in the world, you're never going to have a perfectly human conversation with a chatbot. They have restrictions. They may be, you can call them AI, but they are restricted by the information that they have available to them. And I think that's a huge problem because people lots of places have put chatbots in thinking, they're going to be the solution to all my problems. They're going to take 40% of my calls away. They're going to make it easier for my customers to interact with me. But the reality is that if the information that's behind those chatbots isn't accurate, and the information where those chatbots are going to get their information, if that information isn't accurate, then the chatbot's going to serve up to the customer inaccurate information. It doesn't have human nuance, and it's important that people realize that when they're considering where they deploy chatbots, how they deploy chatbots, and what kind of information they want their chatbots to be able to read.
Yeah, so it sounds as if, like from what you were saying there about capturing information, one of the sort of key advantages should be that, the chatbot's always there. It's always available to answer 24/7, and it can capture basic information and then hand it over as required to a human agent, which all sounds really simple and logical. But why does this kind of sound like a new approach then?
I think it sounds like a new approach because I think A, we're learning, and B, technology is coming along with us. So if I go back sort of 3 or 4 years when I first started working with chatbots and automated artificial intelligence, it was a case of the ability to hand over to a human being wasn't really considered. So the starting point was always the chatbot will start the conversation and finish the conversation. And that was where people's mindset was. It was that idea of taking calls away, move calls away from the contact center and help people to self-serve and push people to self-serve. I think what we're seeing now and where it's sort of evolved to is this idea that chatbots enhance conversations. So they can triage, they can gather information, they can ask intelligent questions because we can give them the information to do that. We can get the chatbot or the conversation engine to ask relevant questions and to understand and empathize to an extent with human beings and help that information form a complete story. Once that information's formed a complete story, that's the great point to hand it over to a human being. It's that interaction between the conversation engine, the human being. So we call it at Conversations by Amy, we call it our human colleague. So the chatbot will gather the information, it will ask the right questions, which means that the agent, when they get that information and the conversation handed over to them, is really empowered, because they don't have to start those conversations again with, oh, can you tell me about what's your name, where are you from, what was your order, what's your problem? They've got the information, and they know where to pick the conversation up from. This really helps customers as well, because the customer doesn't feel like they're repeating themselves. They feel like they've got value out of the time that they've spent conversing with the chatbot. And that's really important, that, you know, chatbots have that ability to either hand off to a human being or give a customer another route out if a human being isn't available. So whether it's opening times, for example, because a contact center, you know, or arranging a callback, it's vitally important that the chatbot has that ability to complete that circle in one way or another, because otherwise, as a customer, you're going to feel like you've completely wasted your time and effort that you've expended in having a conversation with this bot, only to be caught up in a circular argument, shouting into a void, which we've all done, which is a terrible customer experience when the chatbot goes, I'm sorry, I don't understand. I'm sorry, I don't understand. Being really honest with the customer as well, that it's a chatbot. I think one of the biggest mistakes that customers make, or that clients make, is they say, oh, we're not going to tell the customer it's a chatbot up front. So the conversation starts with, hi, how can I help you? And the customer can be quite friendly, maybe. Oh, I needed to go to the vets and I was supposed to be in. And there's a huge amount of information. If you don't tell your customers that they're interacting at the start with a chatbot, they'll have very different expectations. And it's really important that you manage those expectations up front. So I think these things are we've learned them in the last 12 months. I think we've been forced to learn the lessons in the last 18 months because of COVID and how everybody's customer experience interactions have changed. But those learnings have just been accelerated. And with those of us working in automated conversations, we've had a lot of learning to do as well.
Yeah, and that's interesting because, the sort of example you mentioned about being there, capturing the right information and then passing off to a human. I still have an account at a British bank, and every time I contact them, I go through an automated IVR. I give them the details of my problem, my account number, all the background. And then when it does the handoff, the first thing the human always says is, can you give me your account number? And it's just, it's almost like a stereotype of poor planning and service,
I think you're right, Mark. And I think it's really one of the things that in chatbot design, and when you're designing your conversations with your chatbots, it still amazes me how many people sort of use their chatbots to replicate an IVR. So is your call today about this, or this? Well, they replicate it in their chatbot and go, are you contacting me today about this, or this? That's not how we have conversations as human beings. The opening line for any chatbot needs to be, how can I help you today? Just like an agent would.
And are there opportunities there? Because, when we look at businesses like retail, e-commerce, especially in places like Europe, where one brand can cover many different regions, each region having a different language. Can chatbots actually provide a sort of initial buffer for that kind of multilingual support situation?
100%. I think there's the technology that now sits behind a lot of chatbots, ours in particular, enables us to have conversations for example, we have conversations in up to 50 different languages. And that's vitally important, because what we've seen, obviously, in retail is this whole removal of boundaries over the last couple of years in terms of where we shop from, how we got our items, the fact that there are people living in so many different countries who still like to shop with their favorite brands, etc. It's really important that this multilingual aspect is catered for. So in an ideal world, and one of the things that we're starting to see come through in the market for certain are chatbots who can translate. And that's super important, because if I'm a Spanish speaker and I want to buy from a UK brand, for argument's sake, I'm using that because it's just convenient. I want to buy from a UK brand. if I know I've got a good sized Spanish market, what I don't know is where those Spanish speakers are globally. Because they could be in South America, they could be in Spain, they could be, there's all sorts of different timelines that I'm looking for in terms of where I need to cover that language capability. What a good, intelligent chatbot can do is have that conversation with that Spanish speaker, French speaker, German speaker, doesn't matter. They can have that conversation. If that conversation then needs to be handed off, what that chatbot should be able to do is translate that into the language of any available agent. So, for example, if you have a Spanish speaker in South America, but your agent is in the Philippines and your agent is an English speaker, as an example, there is no reason why the customer shouldn't be able to chat to the bot in Spanish. If the bot can't handle it, the bot can hand over to an English-speaking agent. The agent types back in English, the bot translates and hands the conversation back to the customer in Spanish. That technology exists. So for conversations where handoffs are needed, it reduces. I'm not saying it takes it away completely. I think there'll always be a requirement for natural language speaking agents, always. Particularly in certain industries and certain sectors. So healthcare, for example, you might want to rely less on a translation engine in the middle. Certainly sectors like retail, there's no reason at all why those conversations can't be assisted in the middle by a translation engine. And I think the big benefit from that is the fact that your customers get the answers that they need whenever they're asking for them without having to wait for their local customer service centre to be online again. They might not have to wait for their American service centre to be online, or their, European service centre to be online, or the South African service centre to be online. So it removes the reliance on that following the sun pattern. It doesn't take it away completely, nor should it, but it certainly should be able to take the pressure off.
Look, then, we've seen such a big difference in the past year and a half because of COVID, but has COVID changed our attitude towards chatbots and the use of chatbots? We've seen massive changes in like the switch from retail to e-commerce. Have we seen a difference in the use of chatbots or how people relate to them?
100%. I think COVID, as it has done for a lot of technology, actually, it's seriously accelerated not just the adoption, but the pace of change that's been required in that technology to allow it to keep up with the pace of adoption. If you think about going back to the start of the start of the pandemic, there was a rush almost for work from home advisors, and how do customer service centres get their agents safe at home? How did they maintain social distancing? All of the things that everyone had to consider globally with all of their agents and centres. And there was an inevitable shift towards, okay, well, which of these conversations, in order to serve our customers effectively, which of these conversations can we help with automation? And the low-hanging fruit conversations are the ones that kind of got attacked first. And they're the ones that your traditional chatbots were capable of dealing with. So very, very simple things like, how do I return my shirt? Particularly I'm using retail as an example, but how do I return my shirt? Where do I get my refund from? Because a lot of that information is already held on a client's database. It's already there on their website. So there's all that happens is in a traditional chatbot, those conversations took a huge amount of time to plan out, to design, to define. So really at that stage, it was only the basic conversations that could be had. As technology's moved on, we now have chatbots, like Amy, that can read. So they can read the content of the website. They can read anything that's on the website. The benefit of that is the technology change in that's led to is that we don't have to predefine conversations. We don't have to predefine where our customers are going. So we've been able to accelerate the number of conversations we can have with customers. We've been able to vastly increase the types of conversations we can have because the technology has accelerated as well to keep up with that demand. We can now have conversations with people that have levels of empathy. We can have conversations around product availability, colours, store availability of products, where, how, I suppose more complex ones are things like, where's my order? So we can interact more efficiently backwards and forwards into large logistics databases. We can, does this pair of shoes go with that dress? Or have you got a pair of shoes that goes with that dress? Because the technology's changed and it's able to interact more with the content available to it, we're able to have much more valuable and much more rich conversations with customers.
Yeah, that's interesting. And before we came online, when we were talking about and planning this conversation, you mentioned to me something about how there was an opportunity to use chatbots to generate leads, so actually as a sort of sales vehicle. And I thought that was really interesting, because I know that sometimes you might be having dinner or watching TV and you have an idea for something that you'd like to buy. And so you go online and search, and then you click on the details. And obviously it might be 11 o'clock at night and the retailer or whatever store is not open. But you were saying that, instead of finding a static website just with photos of products, what would be the difference if you could then start having a conversation about those products with a bot that actually understands the products?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a real growth area for conversations with bots. AI conversations is this ability to ask rich questions, to ask warm questions of customers. So a great example would be, I wanted to book a cruise, for example, and I happened to be sat down with my partner and we're on the sofa, to your point, 11 o'clock at night, had a glass of wine, and I'm thinking, it'd be lovely to book a cruise now that hopefully soon we might be able to. To be able to then have a conversation with a bot who knows about cruises. So a bot that can then say, that's interesting. So where are you thinking about going? Have you thought about this place? When are you thinking about going? How many people? Do you have a budget in mind that you'd like to spend? Is there anything particular you'd like to do? And the bot can really get into the nuance of the conversation. At the end of that conversation, if there's no agent available, then it's really straightforward for the bot to say, this is great. Let me take your details, and one of our planners will phone you back tomorrow and have a conversation with you about it. Brilliant. There's my details. That conversation is then handed over to the sales team as a warm lead. There's an outbound call can be planned in. So you can even ask the customer what time's convenient for our sales team to call you tomorrow, or our cruise planner to call you tomorrow. So 11 o'clock in the morning, somebody phones. Hi, it's Jenny from the cruise company. I think you're looking for a cruise. I've been on that one. It's absolutely beautiful, Norwegian fjords. And all of a sudden you've got this incredible opportunity to catch people in that moment. I mean, it's a marketing director's dream to be able to have people react in the moment, and have them respond to that call to action within the marketing aspect of the material, and have a conversation there and then, before they get to change their mind.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, because I can't remember how many times, I've been excited about a product or a service, and I'll go online, I find a bit of information, but if there's any kind of friction there, like if it's difficult to pay or it's difficult to find out anything more, then you just kind of give up, and the next day it's forgotten.
Yeah, the whole point of a good artificially intelligent conversation engine. You see, I kind of move away a little bit from chatbots, because chatbots define a question and a load of content as an answer. A question and a load of content as an answer. I think where we're moving to now is this idea of conversational engines. They're all about conversations. They're all about having value-added conversations in the moment at the right point.
And does it matter, or is it important that people in general have become used to conversing with tools like Google Home and Alexa?
I think definitely. I think people are used to having conversations with Google and Siri, with Siri and Alexa. I've actually just taken my watch off, because Siri on my watch keeps trying to involve herself in all of my conversations today. It's driving me insane. But yes, we are definitely much more used to those interactions. I think what is changing is that people's initial conversations with Siri and Alexa and other kind of voice agents like that have been very instructional. Siri, do this. Alexa, do that. Alexa, turn my lights on, etc. So they've been very monochrome. I think what's happening now is as that technology develops and as people do get used to having conversations with chatbots, they're becoming more conversational. So what we're seeing is a change from when we read conversations from a year ago, those conversations were very stilted and static. What we're seeing now are conversations that are much more human when we read them and much more nuanced, and people saying thank you at the end, even though they know they've been talking to a bot. And that's when we know we're starting to get it right.
Yeah. I mean, so what's coming next then? Just as a sort of a final view on this, is it the next step to see chatbots kind of accepted as much more as normal and much more as a first step towards talking to a brand? Or is there some other kind of evolution for the bots on the way then?
So I think you're absolutely right with that point. People are being much more accepting, but I think we've got a way to go before we get rid of the bad chatbots. Before we get rid of these, the chatbots that are just an IVR, and we turn people into much more conversational chatbots, because there isn't a level of distrust. And if you don't get an answer the first 2 or 3 conversations, you are just going to say, why can't I talk to a human? I don't understand. And you've added to dissatisfaction. So I think that we do need to get rid of the toxic bots, as we call them, and move people more into conversations. I think we're going to see a move into voice. So away from just chatting to chatbots in terms of live chat and asynchronous chat and messaging channels, I think they will increase. I mean, the uptake on those is increasing at the moment, but they will increase. But I think we'll also see chatbots used on IVRs, for example, so that if agents aren't available, it's more conversational within the IVR rather than your IVR, press 1 for this, 2 for that, 3 for that. So that's a much better experience. And I think we'll start to see chatbots used in much more interesting use cases as well. So I think we'll start to see them used a lot more for triage. So for people trying to gather information as well. So if you think about I've seen a chatbot used quite extensively at the moment to gather information from some COVID research. So people who've been in a test group, for example, have been using a chatbot to give their feedback. And there's no reason, as chatbots get more intelligent, why we can't use them to gather information more effectively from customers, whether it's for, councils or city councils or government bodies, etc., much more effectively than we are at the moment. So yeah, I think there's definitely going to be a change in use case. There's going to be a shift into voice from using the same technology, and yeah, we need, once people start to trust chatbots more and trust that they're going to have a good outcome from them, then yeah, I think we'll see uptake really increase over the next 6 to 8 months.
That's great. So the era of the chatbot as a deflection from the contact center should be over.
That's what we'd hope. I certainly can't see a point where chatbots take over from the contact center. That's not the objective of using your chatbot. Your chatbot is there to enhance your customer service. It's not there to replace it. And if it can't enhance it, you shouldn't put it in.
Thanks for downloading the CX Files podcast. If you have a moment, please give us a star rating or review on your favourite podcast provider, because this really helps other people to find the podcast. If you have any suggestions for future guests, or ideas, people or topics, then please just find myself, Mark Hillary, or Peter Ryan on LinkedIn and send a suggestion.